They told her she was dreaming too big. They said her idea wouldn't work, that it was too risky, too different, or just plain impossible. But she didn't listen. Instead, she held on to her vision, even when doors kept closing in her face. This is the story of a woman who refused to be stopped by doubt or rejection, a woman who turned those no's into fuel for her fire. What started as a simple idea, dismissed by friends, family, and even business experts, would eventually catch the eye of some of the toughest investors on television's biggest stage, Shark Tank. From the very beginning, she faced challenges that tested her strength, creativity, and determination. Every step of the way, people told her to give up. But deep down, she knew there was something special about her idea, something worth fighting for. The question was, would the world see it the way she did? Would those sharks recognize the potential hiding in what others had overlooked? And more importantly, could she stand her ground when the pressure was at its highest? Her journey is one of grit and courage, filled with moments that will make you cheer and moments that will keep you on the edge of your seat. What happened when she finally walked into the Shark Tank? Did she win the deal, or was her dream crushed once and for all? The answer isn't as simple as you might think. Stick around, because this story is just getting started, and you won't believe what happens next. Before she ever stepped into the bright lights of the Shark Tank, her journey was anything but easy. She came from a small town where people knew her name, but only because she was always the one with wild ideas that seemed too far-fetched to work. She wasn't born into a world of business or privilege. In fact, her first attempts at launching her idea were met with silence, skepticism, or polite smiles that barely hid the doubt. Friends would say, "Maybe try something safer," while others just shrugged and moved on. But her idea wasn't just a hobby or a passing thought. It was born from a real problem she faced every day, something she believed could change lives if given the chance. She spent nights sketching, testing, and perfecting it, all while juggling a full-time job and the usual pressures of life. There were moments when the weight of rejection almost crushed her spirit, and she wondered if she was chasing a dream that no one else could see. Yet, every time she thought about quitting, something inside pushed her forward, a quiet voice reminding her that this was bigger than just her. As words slowly began to spread, a small group of supporters started to emerge. People who saw the spark and believed in her. But even with that, the path was far from clear. Investors were cautious, asking tough questions she struggled to answer. The competition was fierce, and failure seemed to lurk around every corner. When the opportunity to pitch on Shark Tank finally came, it wasn't just about her idea anymore. It was about proving to herself and the world that those early no's didn't define her. Would the sharks bite, or would her biggest fear come true? The moment of truth was closer than ever. When she finally stood in front of the sharks, the stakes felt higher than ever. It wasn't just about her product anymore, it was about proving every doubter wrong. The lights were bright, the camera was rolling, and a panel of experienced investors stared at her with curious eyes. Some looked skeptical, others intrigued, but all were waiting for her to explain why her idea deserved their money and trust. Behind her confidence was a whirlwind of emotions. She thought about the late nights spent perfecting her pitch, the financial struggles she'd faced trying to keep the project alive, and the voices from her past telling her to give up. One shark questioned her aggressively, challenging her on the market size and whether her idea was truly unique. Another worried about the competition and how she would stand out in a crowded space. These questions weren't just obstacles, they were tests of her belief in herself and her vision. Meanwhile, a subplot unfolded in the background. Her closest supporters, the friends and mentors who had encouraged her from the start, were watching nervously from home. Some worried she was putting too much on the line, afraid that one no from the sharks could break her for good. Others believed this moment could be the breakthrough she desperately needed. Their hopes and fears added another layer to the story, a reminder that success isn't just about the individual, but about the people who believe in you when the world doubts you. As the tension in the room grew, she knew the hardest part was yet to come. Would she be able to convince the sharks that her idea was more than just a dream? Could she turn their questions into an opportunity? Or was this the moment everything she worked for would unravel? The answers were still out of reach, and the suspense was thick in the air. The room seemed to shrink as the sharks leaned in, their eyes sharp, waiting for her next move. Every second stretched longer than it should, the silence almost deafening. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she forced herself to breathe steady, to stay calm under the pressure. This was the moment she had prepared for, yet nothing could truly get her ready for the reality of standing face to face with some of the toughest investors in the world. One shark folded his arms, his expression unreadable. Another tapped his fingers impatiently on the table, signaling he wasn't yet convinced. The questions kept coming, each one digging deeper into her business plan, her finances, and her confidence. She felt the weight of every doubt and every no she had ever heard pressing down on her. It wasn't just a pitch anymore, it was a test of her resilience. At the same time, her mind raced back to the people who had doubted her before this moment, the friends who said she was wasting her time, the family members who didn't understand her vision, and the strangers who dismissed her idea as unrealistic. All of those voices echoed in her head, but so did the words of her supporters, the ones who believed she could make it. She felt the pull of both sides, the fear of failure and the hope for success, battling inside her. The sharks exchanged looks, whispering among themselves, their faces a mix of curiosity, skepticism, and calculation. The tension was unbearable, the air thick with anticipation. Everyone watching, whether in the studio or at home, was holding their breath. Would she get the deal that could change everything? Or would her dream slip through her fingers at the very last moment? The answer was just seconds away, and no one could predict what would happen next. Just when it seemed like the tension couldn't get any thicker, one of the sharks dropped a bombshell. Instead of the usual skepticism, he revealed he'd seen a very similar product hit the market recently, one that was already gaining traction. The room went silent for a beat, and her heart sank. Was all her hard work about to be overshadowed by someone else's success? The question hung in the air like a dark cloud, threatening to erase all the progress she'd fought so hard to make. But then something unexpected happened. Another shark spoke up, pointing out a critical flaw in that competing product, a weakness that her idea cleverly solved. Suddenly, the focus shifted. What had looked like a knockout blow became a chance to prove that her innovation wasn't just different, but better. The stakes escalated instantly. Now it wasn't just about convincing the sharks she had a good idea. She had to prove it was the best idea, the one worth investing in despite the competition. Her mind raced. She could feel the pressure mounting, the spotlight sharper than ever. The questions became tougher, the critiques more pointed. She was being pushed to explain every detail, from manufacturing costs to marketing strategy, with no room for error. Every word mattered. Every pause was judged. Behind the scenes, her supporters watched anxiously, knowing that this unexpected twist could either make or break everything. The tension in the room grew so thick it was almost tangible. Would this new challenge destroy her chances, or could she turn it into the ultimate opportunity? The shark's final verdict was still out there, waiting to be delivered, and as the seconds ticked by, the suspense was unbearable. No one could guess how this story would end, but one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. The room held its breath as she took a deep breath and faced the sharks once more. She laid out how her product's unique design solved the problem that the competing product couldn't, highlighting the years of research and countless late nights that had shaped every detail. She spoke with honesty and passion, showing the sharks not just a business plan, but a story, her story, of resilience and belief. One by one, the sharks began to nod, some leaning forward, clearly impressed. The tension started to shift from doubt to possibility. Then, the moment everyone was waiting for arrived: an offer. One shark extended a deal, his confidence in her vision clear. But then, unexpectedly, another shark jumped in, offering a better deal with a strategic partnership that could fast-track her product into major markets. The stakes rose higher than ever, and suddenly she was faced with a tough choice, a moment where her instincts and courage would decide the future. Just as she was about to accept, a surprise came from an unlikely place. A former skeptic, someone who had doubted her at the very start, appeared in the audience with an unexpected offer of support. This unexpected ally brought with them resources and connections that even the sharks hadn't anticipated, turning the whole deal on its head. The room buzzed with excitement and disbelief. In that instant, the story that began with countless no's now seemed to be rewriting itself in real time. She wasn't just a hopeful entrepreneur anymore, she was a rising star with the power to change the game. But with so many opportunities unfolding, one question lingered. Which path would she choose, and how would this choice shape everything to come? The answer would shape her future, and this was just the beginning. After that intense moment, she took a step back and thought carefully about her next move. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about choosing the right partners who believed in her vision as much as she did. She knew this decision would shape the future of her product and her life. With a steady voice and a clear heart, she made her choice, one that felt true to her values and her dream. In the weeks that followed, everything began to fall into place. The deal she accepted opened doors she never thought possible. Her products started reaching new customers, and the support from her unexpected ally brought fresh opportunities she hadn't imagined. The people who once said no were now watching as she built something real, something that mattered. But more than the success, what stood out was her journey. The countless setbacks, the doubts, and the rejections weren't failures, they were lessons. Each no had pushed her to work harder, to think smarter, and to believe stronger. Her story became a reminder that sometimes the greatest obstacles are just steps on the path to something bigger. Today, she's not just a Shark Tank star, she's a symbol of determination and courage. Her idea that once seemed impossible now inspires others to chase their own dreams, no matter how many times they hear no. And while her journey is far from over, one thing is clear: success doesn't come from avoiding failure, but from pushing through it. So, if you ever feel like giving up, remember her story, because sometimes the biggest yes is waiting just beyond the hardest no.